Hello, my name is Delaney Spielman. I am a junior at Roosevelt, and today I will be presenting on my fellowship project for the Office of Student Research titled The Conductor, Patron, and Plans for a Different Concert Culture. In spring 2022, in our COVID-changed world, American orchestras are facing a considerable range of challenges. Even pre-pandemic, the steady decline of audience attendance and donor support had led orchestras into tough decisions regarding labor disputes, musical programming, and strategic planning. Looking back a century ago, we can observe a very different time, but wondering which key voices were already raising concerns about the sustainability of the concert experience. Particular in the American Midwest, where classical music was known to some immigrant communities as a marker of the Old World, while remaining largely unknown to other vast populations. Determined to introduce classical music to the early 20th century American audiences, the St. Louis Symphony Orchestra provides the researcher with a prime example of how artistic and administrative leaders contemplated and enacted such efforts. Rudolph Ganz was the galvanizing figure who took the podium of the St. Louis Symphony 100 years ago, and while himself a member of the European immigrant community in the United States, he had already decided that replicating the old world concert hall experience in America would prove detrimental. In crossing the Atlantic, Ganz proactively sought to challenge traditions. He was eager to interact with audience input, include varied musical experiences in performance, and altogether reconsider what concert culture could look like. Centrally involved in all of these revolutionary practices was the little-known board member, Leonore Goldstein. Letters shared between Goldstein and Ganz reveal a deeply collaborative relationship, centered on reshaping the American concert experience. But they also raise questions about the extent to which women served in silent management roles in arts administration, decades before the space was recognized as a site for women's work. In this instance, Goldstein was not only an involved strategist, but a heavily engaged representative, solicitor, and organizational force in the symphony's growth. My Roosevelt University Office of Student Research Fellowship project arose from working alongside CCPA's Associate Dean Tom Kernan as he prepares an article and chapter of a future book provisionally titled Where is the Audience? Reconsidering the American Concert Hall as a Venue of Social Experience. Kernan's investigation begins with specific figures, structures, and economic factors that shape what musicians have understood as their options. In his second chapter, Experiencing Concerts with Rudolph Ganz, he explores how Ganz's ideology of music as a communal activity shaped his career as a performer, pedagogue, and conductor. My research runs parallel to this by narrowing in on the specific relationship between Ganz and Goldstein. Ganz's life has been well preserved through many sources that can be found at the Newberry Library, and from the private archives of the Ganz family. By closely reading and documenting the Rudolph Ganz papers, I was able to investigate the formation, evolution, and mutual innovation of Ganz and Goldstein. Unfortunately, the collection's letters are exclusively from Ganz's perspective. My research comes from piecing together Ganz's letters to Goldstein during the time of his conductorship, 1921 through 1928, and from viewing newspaper clippings from Goldstein's life. One challenge I faced in this project was deciphering Ganz's 20th century American handwriting. Much of the examination of these letters has relied on careful contextual clues, re-examination, third-party reviews, and approximation of material. The name Rudolph Ganz is one that should be familiar to any faculty member, alumni, or student at Roosevelt University. Having served as president of the Chicago Musical College, what is now Roosevelt Chicago College of Performing Arts, Ganz's name is memorialized in our 7th floor performance hall, 9th floor student space, and in his former piano studio. Born in Switzerland, Ganz received formal training in traditional German performance practices. Enjoying early career success as a soloist, Ganz was already on track for a secure career as an artist in Europe by the age of 20. However, in 1900, he received and accepted an offer to teach music at the Chicago Musical College. Believing this to be an opportunity to actively sculpt and impact the American musical scene, Ganz leapt at the chance, though he would soon come to realize that his hope of Chicago as a site free of old-world traditions ran counter to the traditionalist views of the college's founder, Florence Ziegfeld. In his letters, Ganz complains of European audiences that are extremely well behaved, or perhaps poorly trained, in their lack of reaction and engagement with performances. To Ganz, there was no higher priority than that of the connection that people could attach to music, and he saw America as a blank slate on which to expand the musical boundaries without the national prejudices found in other countries. Ganz's openness was perhaps his greatest strength. His letters show correspondences with famous composers such as Richard Strauss, Igor Stravinsky, and Arnold Schoenberg, eagerly discussing their ideas in pursuing the path forward for music in the 20th century. After splitting for a period of years from the Chicago Musical College, Ganz's travels would lead him to the St. Louis Symphony, where he would accept a conducting and managerial position. Here, his partnership with Goldstein would begin with a shared interest in bringing music to enthusiastic audiences. Ganz writes to Goldstein, "We must give American audiences the chance, to the degree in which they are deserving, to experience pure art and simple expression." Goldstein shared and expanded on these values. Married to a renowned ear, nose, and throat specialist, Dr. Max Goldstein, the family is best known for founding the Central Institute for the Deaf. As an active member of the philanthropic community, Leonore, or Noli as friends called her, was involved in nearly every aspect of life in St. Louis. While helping her husband manage the institute, Goldstein also served as a founding member of the Women's Pioneer Club, board member of the St. Louis Ladies Society, council member for aid and rehabilitation of families dealing with tuberculosis, and as board chair for the Sher Emeth Sabbath School. As for the St. Louis Symphony, Goldstein joined the board following an invitation made to her husband, whose schedule would not permit attendance. While she might have been expected to fill his position as a dilettante member, this expectation was quickly shattered. Goldstein made history as the first woman in the United States to lead the board of a major arts organization. Her impact on the symphony is difficult to define for the sheer volume of roles she filled in her 63 years of service. Having observed many renowned composers and ensembles in action, Goldstein was a discerning listener and occasional critic of music. Her correspondences with Ganz reveal her to be a meticulously organized, imaginative, and bold ambassador for the orchestra. The sheer volume of correspondence from Ganz to Goldstein reveals, at a minimum, the significance of their contact. The contents of the letters, however, reveal that whereas Kernan has demonstrated Ganz's maverick streak, he was not alone in his work and sought, found, and benefited from other like-minded individuals. This was not lost on Ganz, as he writes frequently of his appreciation of Goldstein's efforts. In one of his letters, Ganz writes, "We are happy to hear that everything is going so splendidly. May it last to crown your untiring work." Moreover, during the long periods of time when Ganz was away from St. Louis, he appears to have relied on Goldstein's perception of situations to gauge how he might react, or what he might be able to accomplish. He frequently asks Goldstein to either share her opinions or investigate how certain board members might feel about his suggestions. One popular topic in these letters was Ganz and Goldstein's efforts to revisit a chamber music series. Perhaps raised in response to local competition, the pair decided to revisit the symphony's retired chamber music series in hopes of bringing music to the community in a more local sense, literally in smaller spaces, homes, and varied locations outside the concert hall. In this effort, Goldstein was a huge advocate for the series. In many of his letters, Ganz would congratulate Goldstein on her success in stirring up support for the effort. While it is not clear to what extent other board members were resisting, Ganz writes frequently of concerns for members' support of the campaign. In voicing these concerns, he asks that Goldstein steps in and speaks to the board to convince members of its success. Goldstein's talent for forming relationships and charming individuals played many roles in the success of the orchestra. In newspaper articles, Goldstein reveals that she served as the central liaison for guest performers. Humorously, Goldstein would state that this sometimes meant placating more boisterous personalities. Having a keen appreciation for Goldstein's abilities, there are many times that Ganz requested she act as a middleman. In the case of easing the stress of a newly hired manager, Ganz writes to Goldstein, "Do try to keep him." There are many instances such as this where Ganz relies on Goldstein's social abilities to salvage and mend relations within the orchestra. Another of Goldstein and Ganz's shared efforts was arts education for younger audiences. During his travels abroad, Ganz was inspired by one of Koussevitzky's Children's Crusade performances. Returning back to St. Louis, Ganz was eager to create a similar experience for the children in Missouri. His enthusiasm was met by Goldstein's own strategies. His letters reflect an active conversation about programs, rehearsals, and ideas for engagement. Goldstein's care for young artist cultivation even brought a few famous faces to the stage. By her sister's discovery, Goldstein was introduced to the talented singer Helen Traubel at the age 18, and believed she had a voice worthy of professional training. Because the young singer could not support the funds necessary for private lessons, Goldstein set to work advocating for her. At Goldstein's insistence, Traubel became a soloist on tour with the orchestra under Ganz's conductorship. Perpetually determined, Goldstein found anonymous benefactors to pay for Traubel's lessons and expenses through college education. Years later, despite early naysaying from orchestra managers, Traubel would become a renowned metropolitan soprano. This archive provides a fascinating glimpse into the decision-making and deliberation that went into Ganz's conductorship, and how Goldstein assisted and introduced some of these elements. It also raises many questions about what else was happening in the orchestra behind the scenes. In the early 1900s, it is frequently assumed that the men whose names appear as the key staff were in exclusive control. The Ganz papers challenged this notion by demonstrating Goldstein's instrumental role in strategizing. Their conversations reveal that Goldstein was not acting as a lone woman in the symphony, but rather as part of a network of involved women on whom Ganz relied. For instance, Ganz's first wife, Mary, also wrote to Goldstein and shared opinions of what action should be taken in the orchestra. Mary's letters to Goldstein include the discussion of confidential orchestra matters, reviews of figures involved in the symphony, and schedule detailing for Ganz. There are periods of time where it appears that Rudolph and Mary shared writing duties and traded off writing to Goldstein on a schedule-like account of events. I have further questions about the content absent in this archive from Goldstein's perspective. I am eager to continue this project with time in the St. Louis Symphony archives to examine some of Goldstein's letters. At some point, this research may be revisited with the completion of both parties' perspectives. Additionally, reviewing at the staffing and program archives of the St. Louis Symphony might provide more information about how the administration operated, supporting or not backing the ideas that Ganz and Goldstein pitched to each other in their correspondence. At present, however, reading the Newberry Library's Rudolph Ganz papers specifically for the conductor's relationship with Goldstein adds a further layer to the arguments advanced by Kernan, Colette Collister, and others. As I surmise, Ganz was indeed convinced of the need for music in America to favor community making, and in his best moments, this occurred through an openness to have many voices, including those of key women involved in decision-making. At the conclusion of this presentation, I would like to thank you for watching this video. I would also like to thank the Office of Student Research for their support in pursuing this information. Additionally, I would like to thank my project mentor, Dean Kernan, for his guidance throughout the semester. Thank you for taking the time to learn about the conductor, patron, and plans for a different concert culture.